This is a key to topic 13, worksheet 1. And for each of these polynomial functions, and each one is linear or quadratic, you want to find the difference quotient. Now remember, it does say, show all your work on paper. Make sure you look at the sample work provided in Canvas to see what work you should submit to receive full credit. And then circle the difference quotient for each of the functions on your paper. So basically, you had to do it in little steps so that way your statements will be mathematically correct. If any of your statements are mathematically incorrect, you don't receive full credit. So you have to be careful how you do this. So in number one, we have f of x equal 7x minus 2. Now the difference quotient does mean something, and you're going to see what that means later on in calculus, either business calculus or scientific calculus. But the formula for difference quotient is this: is f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. And so when you looked at the lessons, especially the sample work that was provided for you, you'll notice that the first thing you want to do is find f of x plus h. And so we'll call that step 1. So step 1, you're going to find f of x plus h. So remember what that means. That means wherever you see the variable x in your function, you're going to substitute x plus h. So this becomes 7 times, in parentheses, x plus h minus 2. And then it's just a matter of you simplifying this. So it'll be 7x distributing plus 7h minus 2. Okay? And so that's your step 1. This is what you found. Step 2 now, once you find this, step 2 is your numerator. So step 2 is to find your numerator. So step 2, you're going to say find f of x plus h minus f of x. So you're finding your numerator now. So remember, this part we already found, that's this. So you're going to say 7x plus 7h minus 2. Now you got to be careful with this part. You are subtracting your function. This is your function. So you're subtracting all of those terms. So you got to put that in parentheses. Because when you're subtracting all those terms, each of those signs will change. So now you're going to distribute the negative, or you're going to add the opposite. And so this becomes 7x plus 7h minus 2 minus 7x plus 2. Now remember from our lessons, at this point, it is at the end of step 2, where every term that does not have a factor of h will cancel out, will add up with its opposite. So its opposite will be there. For example, if 7x does not have a factor of h, so you better see its opposite. You do. The opposite of 7x is negative 7x. When you add them up, you get 0. Negative 2, positive 2. The only terms that should be left are the terms that have a factor of h in it. So this becomes 7h. So that's your numerator. So that is your numerator right here. So let me go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. Okay. All right. Okay, so now step 3. So step 3 is to find this part now. So step 3 is to find the difference quotient. That's basically what you're finding now. And so you found the numerator. The numerator is this. The denominator is h. Don't forget to divide by h, and then you reduce. These divide out, and so the answer is 7. And so you're going to say the answer then will be the difference quotient. You're going to say this is the difference quotient equals 7. So that's your answer. Okay? So that's number 1. So number 1, it's a linear function, so it's usually the easiest to deal with. The next 2 are quadratic. So those are going to be a little bit more involved, but it's still easy to deal with. So let's look at number 2. So number 2, you have this quadratic function. It is f of x equal 4x squared minus 3x minus 2. And again, you want to find the difference quotient. So you want to find f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. So again, step 1, you're going to find this first. You're going to find f of x plus h. So step 1, find f of x plus h. So remember what that means. That means wherever you see the variable x in your function, and I see it twice, you're going to substitute x plus h. So you get 4 times x plus h squared minus 3 times x plus h minus 2. All right, and now you're going to simplify all these parentheses. So for this one, the x plus h squared, Remember, that means x plus h times itself. And so when you follow that out, x times x is x squared. The outer is xh. The inner is also xh. And the last, a positive h times a positive h, is a positive h squared. When you combine like terms, this becomes x squared. Xh plus xh is 2xh, and then plus h squared. So what you found, this trinomial, is just this part right here. But remember, that's being multiplied by 4. So you got to say this now. You got to say 4 times this trinomial, x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Then go ahead and distribute the negative 3, so that becomes minus 3x minus 3h, and then minus 2. Now let's go ahead and distribute the 4. When I do that, I get 4x squared. 4 times 2xh is 8xh. 4 times h squared is 4h squared. Minus 3x, minus 3h, minus 2. All right. Now nothing here can be combined. All right. So all I found now was step 1, this right here. Now we're going to find step 2, which is the numerator. So let's find step 2. So step 2 will be find the numerator. F of x plus h minus f of x. So remember, this part is step 1. You already found step 1. That's all these terms here. So rewrite it. So that's going to equal 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared minus 3x minus 3h minus 2. And then you are subtracting f of x, which is your function. But remember, you're subtracting all of those terms, so you got to put that in parentheses. So 4x squared minus 3x minus 2. Now let's go ahead and get rid of these parentheses. So add the opposite. So this becomes 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared minus 3x minus 3h minus 2. And the opposite of 4x squared is a negative 4x squared. The opposite of a negative 3x is a positive 3x. And the opposite of a negative 2 is a positive 2. If you do this correctly, every term, remember at the end of step 2, every term that does not have a factor of h, its opposite better be there, so that way when you add them up, they cancel out. 4x squared, negative 4x squared. This has an h, this has an h, negative 3x, positive 3x. They have to be 0. This has a factor of h, negative 2, positive 2, add it to be 0. Every factor that's left has a factor of h. Okay? Now, so that's your numerator, right? That's your numerator. So that's good. So now we can do step 3. So step 3 is where you take step 2. So now you're finding this. You're finding f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. So you're finding the difference quotient. So now this whole thing here was the end of step 2, the numerator. So this becomes 8xh plus 4h squared minus 3h, all divided by h. At that point, notice that this polynomial in the numerator, the GCF is h. So let's go ahead and factor out an h. So when I factor out an h, I get h times 8x plus 4h. h times 4h is 4h squared, and then minus 3. All divided by h, and then this h will divide out, and you're left with 8x plus 4h minus 3. And so the answer you're going to say is that the difference quotient is going to equal 8x plus 4h minus 3. So when you take calculus, either business or scientific calculus, this is going to make some sense. So you're talking about the slope of a secant line to a curve, and so that's going to make some sense. And it also has some applications. You're going to see how it relates to the idea of the derivative. So the slope of a tangent line. So all that's going to come into play later on. Not in this course, in another course. So that was number 2. So that's the answer you would give me. You would show all this work just like I did it, and then you show the answer. And then finally, number 3. So number 3, we have this quadratic function. So number 3, we have f of x equal negative 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. And again, you want to find the difference quotient. So the difference quotient is f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. And so step 1, you're going to find f of x plus h. And so that's this right here. So wherever you see the variable x, you're going to substitute x plus h, right? So we get negative 2 times x plus h squared plus 7 times x plus h, and then plus 3. And so now you're going to simplify this. So you know that x plus h squared is just like the previous one. It's going to be that trinomial. When you fall this out, you're going to get x squared. The outer and the inner are both xh. So when you add them up, you get 2xh. And then a positive h times a positive h is h squared. And so remember, all you found was this, though. So that's be multiplied by negative 2. So I get negative 2 times this trinomial, x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. And then let's go ahead and distribute the 7 here. So I get plus 7x plus 7h plus 3. And then finally, let's go ahead and distribute the negative 2. I get negative 2x squared. A negative 2 times 2xh is a negative 4xh. A negative 2 times h squared is a negative 2h squared. And then plus 7x plus 7h plus 3. All right. Okay, so that was step 1. None of these terms you can combine. Okay, so that was step 1. So that's just this part of the numerator. Now we're going to find the numerator. So that's step 2. So step 2 now is, this is step 1, subtract your function. So step 2, you're going to say f of x plus h minus f of x. So we already found step 1, so that's this. So I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite it. Negative 2x squared minus 4xh minus 2h squared plus 7x plus 7h plus 3. And then you're subtracting your function. Your function is this. So that's what you're subtracting. So you're subtracting in parentheses negative 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. So that's what you're subtracting. Then you're going to get rid of the parentheses. So you're going to add the opposite of each of those terms. So you get negative 2x squared minus 4xh minus 2h squared plus 7x plus 7h plus 3. The opposite of a negative 2x squared is a positive 2x squared. The opposite of a positive 7x is a negative 7x. And the opposite of a positive 3 is a negative 3. Now remember, at the end of step 2, every term that does not have a factor of h, this does not have a factor of h, its opposite better be there, and it is. Negative 2x squared plus 2x squared is 0. That has a factor of h. That has a factor of h. In fact, it has 2 of them. This does not. A positive 7x and a negative 7x add up to be 0 when I combine them. This has a factor of h. This does not. A positive 3 and a negative 3 is 0. Every term that is left, has a factor of h, at least one of them. This has one factor of h. This has one factor of h. The exponent's 1. This has 2. To h times h. Okay, so that was your numerator. So at the end of step 2, that's your numerator. Then you're almost done. Step 3 is actually find the difference quotient. So you're going to take the numerator and divide by h. So your numerator is this. So you get negative 4xh minus 2h squared plus 7h, all divided by h. And at that point, though, you want to factor out the h. So you're going to get h times negative 4x. So h times negative 4x is negative 4xh. H times a negative 2h is a negative 2h squared. And then h times a positive 7 is 7h. And then they divide by h. These h's divide out. And so you get negative 4x minus 2h plus 7. And so therefore, that's your answer. You just go ahead and say, though, you say the difference quotient, f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h equals negative 4x minus 2h plus 7. Okay? All right, so that is the key. That is the key to topic 13. All right, so the chances are the one in your test, though, guys, will be a quadratic. So just make sure you know how to deal with finding the difference quotient of a quadratic function.